I bought a mirror and it refuses to reflect me. I found the mirror late one night, scrolling aimlessly through an online marketplace I'd never used before. It was one of those shady-looking sites with outdated fonts, mismatched color schemes, and listings that looked like they hadn't been touched since the early 2000s. I wasn't even looking for a mirror. I was searching for a vintage lamp for my reading nook. But the listing caught my eye. Old decorative mirror, 1 of 1, rare. No brand, no dimensions. Just a single grainy photo of the object propped up against a wall in what looked like a damp basement. Most of the frame was in shadow, but from what I could see, it was silver, possibly tarnished and intricately carved, though time had worn the details thin. There was something oddly magnetic about it, a pull I couldn't explain. The description was no help. Doesn't show wear. Antique, heavy, not responsible after purchase. Before I knew what I was doing, I clicked buy now. My hands moved like they were remembering something I hadn't lived yet. The mirror arrived 4 days later, delivered by a silent courier who didn't wait for a signature. I found the package on my doorstep, wrapped in stiff, ancient-looking newspaper. The paper crumbled between my fingers as I peeled it away. It was heavier than I expected. When I finally unwrapped it, I froze. The frame was silver, yes, but it wasn't just worn, it was scarred. Thin, jagged scratches ran across the surface of the metal, as though someone had tried to carve symbols into it and then abandoned the effort in a panic. Some scratches looked intentional, others not. I set it against the living room wall. My cat, Nib, walked in, took one look at it, and hissed. I laughed nervously. "It's just a mirror," I told her. Except it wasn't. When I stood in front of it, I wasn't there. The wall behind me was, the coat rack I never used, the lamp that buzzed when it warmed up, the bookshelf stacked with more books than I'd ever read, but not me. No matter how I moved, waved my hand, tilted my head, jumped in place the mirror, showed the room with perfect clarity, perfect stillness, but I wasn't in it. I blinked hard, tried again, nothing. It reflected the wall, the furniture, even the cat who slunk low across the floor behind me, but not me. I backed away slowly. I didn't panic, not right away. I rationalized. Maybe it was some kind of trick mirror, like the kind they use in amusement parks or old magic acts. Maybe the surface was warped or darkened in a way I couldn't see. I walked around to check the back of the Framino electronics. No sensors, just wood and metal, heavy, silent. I tried taking a photo with my phone. In the photo, everything appeared normal except me. I was missing, not even a blur, just an empty space where I should have stood. That was when the laughter stopped. I moved the mirror to different rooms. The kitchen, my bedroom, even the hallway. It never changed. Wherever I placed it, the mirror always showed the room behind it, faithfully without me in it. But that wasn't the worst part. The light was wrong. It's hard to describe if you haven't seen it. The mirror showed the room with the same general layout, but the lighting inside the glass shimmered strangely. It was dimmer, somehow, even in full daylight. And at night, it glowed faintly like the light was leaking in through invisible cracks. Sometimes, it bled. That's the only word that fits. Faint streaks of light would trickle across the floor in the reflection, pale ribbons that pulsed like veins under skin. I turned around a dozen times, expecting to see the source, maybe a headlight outside, or a trick of my lamp, but there was never anything. Nothing moved in the real room, only in the mirror. I took to covering it at night with a thick fleece blanket. I even considered putting it back in the packaging and stashing it in the basement. But something always stopped me. I kept wanting to see it again, like it had its own gravity. Curiosity started to outweigh fear. I joined a few niche online forums, paranormal, antique collectors, and even one for mirror enthusiasts. Yes, that exists. I described what I was seeing, anonymously of course. Most people ignored me. One or two joked about cursed objects and Bloody Mary. But one user messaged me directly. Their name was Antumbra7. Their message was brief. "Don't let it face your bed, ever." I asked them why. They never responded. When I checked the next day, their account was deleted. The warning crawled into my brain and wouldn't leave. That night, I woke up from a dream I couldn't remember and found myself sitting upright in bed, heart pounding. The mirror was covered, tucked behind the dresser across the room, but I still felt exposed. Watched. A few days later, I saw something move in the mirror. It was subtle, just a flicker at the edge of the glass. I thought it was Nib at first, but she was curled on my couch, asleep. I watched the mirror for a long time after that, waiting for it to happen again. Eventually, it did. A soft, dragging movement along the baseboard, like fingers. Crooked, uneven fingers scraping just along the bottom edge of the frame. I turned. Nothing. Back to the mirror. Gone. That was the first time I dreamed of the rotting room. It was a perfect replica of my living room, except everything was aged and decaying. The walls were peeling, sloughing off in damp sheets. The air was thick and hard to breathe. And I was sitting in a chair in front of the mirror, unable to move. I could hear something behind me. Wet, shuffling steps, a breathing like bellows soaked in swamp water. I couldn't turn my head, couldn't blink. The mirror was no longer just a surface, it was a window. And something on the other side was leaning in. It pressed its mouth against my ear and whispered, "You let me in." I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, tangled in my sheets like they'd been tied. The mirror was uncovered. I know I covered it. I know I did. And I live alone. That was the first night I seriously considered getting rid of it. I carried it down the stairs, careful not to trip, hauled it to the alley behind my apartment, lifted it over the dumpster's edge and shoved it in. It landed with a heavy crash. I stood there, listening, until I heard the distinct sound of glass breaking. Relief washed over me like a wave. But when I returned to my apartment, the mirror was hanging back on my wall. Unbroken, unmoved. Exactly where it had been. Only now, something had changed. The room in the reflection didn't match mine anymore. The coat rack was gone. The window was boarded up. The door, which in real life stood slightly ajar, was now sealed shut, and the light was redder, like something just outside the frame was burning. I reached out and touched the glass. It was warm. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with every light on, staring at the mirror from across the room. It was silent, perfectly still, but the reflection kept shifting in tiny, stomach-turning ways. The boarded-up window seemed more tightly sealed than before. The wallpaper in the mirror's version of my room was starting to peel, curling at the edges like something had clawed it loose. Worst of all, I couldn't stop looking at the door in the reflection. In real life, it remained open, just a crack, but in the mirror, it stayed shut, firmly, the kind of shut that suggested something heavy was leaning against it on the other side. I tried calling my mum, just to talk to someone, hear another voice, but my phone kept dropping the call. I rebooted it, reset my Wi-Fi, and eventually gave up. Around 3:00 a.m., I took a thick blanket and threw it over the mirror, then dragged my dresser in front of it for good measure. I went to bed telling myself I was done with it, that I would hire someone to take it away, that I didn't care if it showed up again, I would smash it with a hammer the next time. But the dreams didn't stop. That night, I dreamed I was back in that chair, same rotting version of my apartment, same pressure on my chest, but this time, I looked down at my hands. They were flaking. Bits of skin crumbled off my fingers like brittle ash. Underneath wasn't bone or blood, it was just more dust. Endless layers of it, like I'd been hollow for years. Then I heard it again. The breath. Wet, slow, right behind my head. "You're almost ready," it whispered. I woke up choking, gagging, not from fear, but from something thick in my mouth. I ran to the bathroom and spit into the sink. Ash. Fine. Grey powder clung to my tongue and teeth. I scrubbed for 5 minutes, heart hammering, jaw trembling. That morning, I made a decision. I was going to find out where the mirror came from. I dug through my email until I found the original order confirmation. No seller name, no return address, just a dead-end account and an anonymous storefront that had already been removed from the site. I pulled the photo from the listing and ran a reverse image search. Nothing at first. But then I found a cached result on a now-defunct estate auction site. The mirror had been sold alongside several other antiques, all from the estate of a man named Roland Yates, an eccentric collector and retired history professor who had vanished in 1997. His home, according to the article I found, had been left untouched for over a decade. When authorities finally entered it, they found every single mirror in the house shattered except for one. Mine. I kept digging and found a forum thread from a small group of amateur paranormal researchers who had investigated Roland's disappearance. One of them had apparently recovered part of his personal journal from an attic trunk. Only a single page had been legible. It needs to be seen to feed, but it won't reflect what's real, only what it wants. That line sat in my chest like a stone. I scrolled deeper into the forum. The researchers had theories, wild ones. Some believed in entities that existed between layers of perception, what they called thin places. One post mentioned something they called a reflective parasite, an awareness that could only exist when being perceived through glass. Another post claimed that certain objects could act as dimensional gateways, with reflections slowly overriding reality itself. The mirror wasn't a mirror. It was a door. And I had been looking into it, feeding it. That night, I started hearing tapping. Faint, rhythmic. It came from behind the dresser. I held my breath, pressed my ear to the wall. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. Then a whisper, so low I thought I imagined it. Let me through. I ran, slept in the bathtub with the door locked and a kitchen knife under my pillow. In the morning, I tried to move the mirror again, but when I pulled the dresser away, the blanket had fallen. The mirror was exposed. It didn't show the room behind me anymore. It showed a hallway. Narrow, endless, walls stained and flickering like a fluorescent bulb was dying just out of frame. The floor was damp. Black streaks curled across it like veins, and at the far end of the hallway was a shape, too far to see clearly, but it was moving. Closer. Each time I looked at the mirror, the shape had inched forward. The hallway didn't change, but the figure was approaching. I couldn't make out its details, only the suggestion of height and the unnatural bend of its limbs. I covered the mirror again, screwed a wooden panel over it, packed a bag and left my apartment. I stayed in a cheap motel 2 towns over. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, didn't use my credit card. I thought if I got far enough away, I could shake it, let the thing starve without my eyes on it. For 2 days, it worked. Then on the 3rd night, I woke up and found the mirror sitting in the corner of the motel room, still screwed into its frame. But the wood was cracked down the center, like it had burst from the inside. And the hallway? The figure was halfway down it now. I started crying. The next day, I tried driving to my sister's house. She lived 5 hours north and didn't pick up the phone. I told myself I'd explain everything once I arrived. That I just needed to be around someone who could confirm I wasn't going insane. But I never made it. At a rest stop around midnight, I pulled over to nap. I was too tired to drive, and it felt safer sleeping in the car than risking another motel. I woke up before dawn to the sound of scraping. The mirror was propped against the fence beside the car. Not in the trunk, not on the seat. Outside, waiting. I approached it like someone approaching a coffin that wasn't empty. The hallway inside was brighter now, and the figure was only a few steps from the glass. It was tall, elongated. Its spine was bent in 3 unnatural places, like someone had tried to fold it into a box. Its skin was grey, leathery. Its hands were too long, with too many fingers tapered, branching at the ends like dry roots. I fell back and screamed. By the time I looked again, the figure was gone. Only the hallway remained, and a smear on the inside of the glass, like something had pressed its face against it. I didn't go back home. I left the rest stop as the sun rose, driving in a daze, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror like something would crawl out of it. I didn't have a destination anymore, just distance. I kept driving until I ran out of gas and parked near a diner somewhere in upstate New York. I didn't eat. I just sat in the car, breathing hard, trying to decide what to do next. The mirror didn't follow me that day, or at least, I didn't see it. But I couldn't rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the hallway again. The flickering ceiling lights, the black veins crawling up the walls like mold with a pulse. And I could feel it getting closer. The dreams were worse now. In one of them, I stood in front of the mirror, watching myself. Only, it wasn't really me. The version of me in the mirror was pale, with eyes like dried-out wells. Its mouth never moved, but I could hear it whispering. Not long now. I reached out to touch the glass in the dream, and the other me did the same, but just before our fingers met, its hand pushed forward, breaking through the surface, like the glass had turned to water. I woke up screaming, heart in my throat, my fingers burning cold. I looked down. My fingertips were covered in dust again, that fine, pale ash. Worse, my fingernails were cracked, splintered at the edges, like I'd been scratching at something rough for hours. I hadn't sleepwalked since I was a kid. At least, I didn't think I had. But this was different. It wasn't me moving. Something else was. That night, I tried recording myself while I slept. I set up my phone on the motel's nightstand, camera pointed at the bed. It was the only way I could know for sure what was happening when I wasn't awake. When I reviewed the footage the next morning, my hands started shaking. At around 2:46 am, I sat up. Not gradually, not like someone waking from a dream. I shot upright like a puppet yanked by its strings. For a full minute, I didn't move. Then I turned my head toward the corner of the room, where the mirror was now standing. I hadn't brought it in. But there it was, in the corner of the recording. Somehow, it was just there, like the camera had caught something that hadn't existed a moment before. I stood up and walked to it. And I started talking. There was no audio, just static, but I was definitely speaking, whispering, muttering. My eyes never blinked. At one point, I pressed my forehead against the glass and stood there like I was listening. And then, I smiled. That was the worst part, the smile. It wasn't mine. It didn't fit my face. It was wide and slow and too full of teeth. My mouth opened wider than I thought it could, and then, in a movement so fast it blurred, I slammed both palms against the mirror. The screen glitched. The footage jumped, then cut out completely. I sat in silence for what felt like hours, just staring at my own expression frozen on the screen. That rictus grin, that hollow gaze. Like something had tried on my face and hadn't figured out how to wear it properly. That's when I realized the truth. The mirror wasn't showing me the hallway. It was showing me what came after. A place beyond mine, a space I wasn't supposed to see. And every time I looked, every time I dreamed, that place took more of me. It was learning how to be me. I threw my phone in the motel bathtub, crushed it under the heel of my boot. It didn't matter. The evidence wasn't important anymore. I had to stop the mirror. But how do you destroy something that refuses to be gone? I tried. Again. I wrapped it in bedsheets and carried it outside to a field near the edge of town. I doused the whole thing in lighter fluid and struck a match. Flames curled around the fabric. For a moment, I felt relief, hope. Then the fire turned blue. It didn't consume the mirror, it spread from it. Like the heat was coming from inside the glass. The flames bent unnaturally, folding toward the frame as though being sucked in. I watched in horror as the sheets disintegrated, but the mirror remained, untouched. The hallway inside was so close now. I could make out the tiles on the floor. Filthy, cracked. The walls pulsed faintly, like they were alive. And the figure was at the edge of the glass. It didn't move like a person. It twitched in bursts, limbs jerking with insect-like precision. Its head lolled from side to side, neck too loose, but its hands were reaching. One pressed against the inside of the mirror. A black, branching hand with knotted knuckles and fingers like broken antlers. As it touched the glass, the surface rippled. And then came the knock. Tri soft, deliberate knocks. From inside the mirror, I ran, left everything behind. The fire went out on its own. When I looked back once from the tree line, the mirror was standing upright again, waiting. I drove until I couldn't keep my eyes open. pulled over behind a closed grocery store, and collapsed in the back seat. When I woke up, the mirror was sitting beside the dumpster. Same hallway. Only now I could see my reflection again. But it wasn't mimicking me. It was standing still, staring at me, smiling. The reflection didn't blink. It stood inside the mirror like a photograph come to life me. But not me. It was smiling faintly. Lips curled at the corners in a way I'd never seen my own face move. Behind it, the hallway stretched on. The figure, gone but not forgotten. That emptiness felt more threatening than its presence ever had. I stepped closer to the glass, cautiously. My reflection didn't follow. It kept its eyes fixed on mine, but its body stayed frozen, arms at its sides, fingers twitching softly like it was restraining the urge to reach through. I whispered, "What do you want?" It smiled wider, then raised one hand and pointed. Directly behind me. I froze. The air turned sharp, metallic. The hairs on my arms lifted. I turned slowly. There was nothing behind me but the back wall of the grocery store, a closed dumpster, crumbling pavement. I turned back to the mirror. It was empty. No hallway, no reflection, just light. Bleeding light. The glass pulsed with its soft waves that shimmered across the surface, like heat rising from asphalt. But this light wasn't warm. It was wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. As if something ancient was looking at me through the glow, peeling away my skin one cell at a time. I stepped back. The light followed. It spilled across the ground, dragging my shadow along with it, even in the dim grey morning. And then I felt it. A pull. Not physical, not even mental. It was inward, like gravity twisted around my chest, like my soul was being folded toward the glass. I staggered back, ripped my eyes away, and ran. I didn't stop until I reached the main road, hitchhiked to a neighbouring town, paid cash for a week at a small roadside motel, and bolted the mirror to the floor using a chain I bought from a hardware store. I covered it with 2 layers of thick canvas, stapled them shut, then pushed a wardrobe in front of it. I left the lights on, slept with salt around the bed. It didn't help. The next night, I woke up sitting cross-legged in front of the mirror. The canvas was torn clean down the middle. The wardrobe had been moved aside like it was made of cardboard. My eyes were open, but I couldn't move. The mirror showed a room again, but not one I'd ever seen. It was a rotting, windowless space, with walls that bulged like something behind them was breathing. In the center was a chair. In the chair was me. But not quite. My limbs were too long, my face too still, and my eyes were solid black. I wasn't looking at the mirror. I was staring at something behind it. Behind me. Then the scene shifted. The mirror turned black for a moment, and then there it was again, the hallway. But now it was gone. Collapsed. The walls buckled outward into an infinite dark. And something was stepping through. The creature, the one that had followed me for weeks. It no longer crawled, it stood. Its form wasn't broken anymore. It had become human-shaped, not human, but close enough to mimic, like it had learned. I realized with a creeping horror, it had been watching me to study how to wear me. And now it knew. I stumbled back from the mirror, gasping for breath. The light was gone, the hallway too. But the mirror now reflected the motel room perfectly, including me. Only I wasn't moving. I watched in absolute paralysis as the reflection stepped forward and exited the frame. My real body was still frozen in front of the mirror, watching. The version of me that had stepped out, walked behind me, paused, and placed its hand on my shoulder. I felt it. Ice cold. Real. And then, I was back in control of my body. But I wasn't alone. I could feel it inside my skin, pressing outward, as if trying to test the fit. My bones ached. My joints popped every time I moved. I looked into the mirror and the reflection moved with me. Perfectly now. Too perfectly. I should have felt relief. But I didn't. I felt grief. Something had taken my place on the other side. Or worse, it had taken me. The next few days are a blur. I tried burning it again, tried burying it. The mirror always came back. Sometimes it arrived before me, other times it appeared in places I'd never been, waiting. No matter where I went, it was always near. The reflection now mimicked me flawlessly, but something in the eyes never matched. They were too still, too satisfied. I think the creature crossed over. I think I let it in. One night, I came home and found the mirror turned to face my bed. I never moved it. There were handprints on the sheets, ashy smears, and claw marks thin and curved etched into the bed frame. I looked into the mirror and saw nothing. No room, no hallway, just a blank, rippling grey surface. I knew what it meant. It was ready, and it had no further use for pretending. I tried writing down everything that happened to warn someone, to pass along what little I understood. I kept the lights on, salt on the floor, iron nails above the door. Nothing works. The last time I looked in the mirror, I saw my reflection smiling again. It pointed behind me. I didn't turn around this time, because I could feel it, standing right there, breathing down my neck. And this time, I smiled too. Not because I wanted to, but because it was my turn to wear the face. If you're reading this, don't try to find the mirror. Don't try to help. Don't look into it. Break it, burn it, bury it in salt, drop it into the ocean. Forget this story if you can, because it only needs to be seen once. Once is enough. After that, it remembers you.